Hello everyone, it is day 14 of my trip to the UK, November 8th, 2023, and I am staying in Weston-super-Mare with my friends Anthony and Krina Garnon, who have so kindly given me a place to stay, and today I'll be taking a look at some of Anthony Garnon's Doctor Who collection. We're going to start off with the original artwork that he has in his incredible collection.
So we have a William Hartnell page with Ian and Barbara. So this is John Ridgway. We've got a Fifth Doctor page, some Fifth Doctor artwork, some classic from the Tides of Time graphic novel, Mick Austin on the artwork for the Fifth Doctor. We have a Second Doctor page by Lee Sullivan. We don't have any Third Doctor. We've got a Fourth Doctor next door on the wall by Charlie Adlard, and he is the long-term artist on The Walking Dead. That's probably the most valuable piece I own. This is the page after Ace dies in the comic. So the page before is a splash page. Well, technically, no, actually, this is the page she dies, because if you see, she says her final words. You won't have seen this in the graphic novel. It minus the speech blues.
Oh, wow.
Because this is
clean artwork.
Yeah, pre-digital. So before they added it on. And this is the Five Doctors TARDIS, the page after it's destroyed. These pages, quite sad, but Martin Geraghty, the artist, wrote online that lots of his artwork had been stolen. And some of these pages were ones that he'd listed. So I got in touch with him and I said that I had the pages. And he replied back and said, thanks for telling me. Obviously, it wasn't me that took the pages. I bought them off somebody else who'd bought them off somebody else who bought them off somebody else. And he said, keep them. I'm just glad they're with a fan who enjoys the pages.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know who has the Ace page. And this is the very last Seventh Doctor page in all of Doctor Who magazine. After this, the following issue, or 2 issues later, it switched to the McGann.
That's
comics.
stunning.
So you can see, so we've got Susan, Perry, Lee Sullivan artwork for Children of the Revolution, Destry. I want to say this is Bad Blood. These are both from Bad Blood. This is. I think this is the cliffhanger that leads into the next story when she's in hospital. This is from Oblivion. So these are by Martin Geraghty. Martin's the artist that I have the most artwork for. Martin again. Lee Sullivan. Oh, Lee Sullivan. There's no acetate for this one, but this is pre-digital lettering.
Right.
And then this is the end of Oblivion when she decides to leave the TARDIS. What we don't have is I don't have the page where she kisses Faye.
Right.
That would have been a really nice one. But this is her penultimate page.
That was awesome.
And this is the Flood.
Yeah.
So the Cyberman story. By this point, Photoshop was around, so they could start to maneuver various aspects. But if you remember the story, it had ghost Cybermen behind these characters with their hands over their heads.
Oh, wow.
So they drew the Cybermen separately. You can see the hand. There we are.
Oh, that's so cool.
So that wasn't on the original artwork. So the original artwork looked like this.
Wow.
This is the very last page of 8th Doctor artwork from Doctor Who magazine. So he ends, I think he says something like he wants to have a leather jacket because it was hinting that the 9th Doctor was coming.
Oh, wow.
And this is the second page of The Love Invasion by Mike Collins.
Wow.
Mike blue sketches and then sends across to David Roach to ink. So David Roach inked quite a lot of these pieces, if not all of them. You can then Photoshop the blue out. A little bit the same principle as green screen for movies. Hunters of the Burning Stone, so Ian and Barbara. I like this one because it's got the Series 7 onwards TARDIS. It's very Doctor Who Weekly.
Yeah, I was going to say it's very...
This was Clara's last ever page in the comic. And actually, the great thing about this one is if you remember, Doctor Magazine at this point had changed its ratio. So quite a lot of the image is cut off. Like you can see some more of the students at the side. There's a page underneath that I was gifted. It doesn't feature the Doctor. So this was fully illustrated by David Roach.
Wow.
Kind of nice.
Okay.
And then this is non-Doctor Who. This is a page of Batman artwork that shows Batman's origin of his parents' murder. Because there's something even cooler behind. This is some Scott Gray artwork from The White Dragon. It's a very recent and it's Jodie Whittaker,
Yeah.
13th Doctor fighting Bruce Lee. So Scott drew this bigger than most of the other artwork in this book. You can kind of make out how it would have pieced together.
Wow.
Some really nice Scott Gray artwork. By this point in the magazine's artwork, it had started to become predominantly digital. You don't see as many original pages. So I think Martin Geraghty's still doing original artwork. Scott Gray was. But some of our artists had transitioned across to digital, so much so that by the time you get to Liberation of the Daleks, Lee Sullivan is now doing that one fully digital. So, quirky fact, but that story is the very first full incarnation of a Doctor's run that will be completely digital. So although the 14th Doctor only had 14 installments,
14,
he does not have any physical artwork. The 6th Doctor is a very, very big piece. Here we are. So some 6th Doctor artwork. So this one is from the World Shapers. So this is John Ridgway. Obviously Frobisher. 6th Doctor Perry. Got 6th Doctor artwork. We have 7th, 8th, 9th. 10th Doctor we do have. Again, that's next door. The 10th Doctor artwork is from the strip that featured the Brigadier. So I own some Brigadier 10th Doctor artwork. 11th Doctor, you've seen 12th Doctor, you've seen 13th. Don't own any War Doctor. Other than Titan Comics, there hasn't been a Doctor Who magazine, Fugitive, yet. Although these haven't been published in Doctor Who magazine, they are tenuously connected because these are pages of original artwork from my days at Forbidden Planet when we had book signings. I'd quite often get people coming in and I'd ask them to illustrate various pieces for me. So this one is Doctor 11 by the creator of the Doctor Men. This is Dave Gibbons' 4th Doctor.
Oh my God.
So he drew that one for me. This is Sarah Jane Smith by Scott Gray. I think some of these are not Doctor Who. This is by a little-known artist called Russell T. Davis. But he forgot to put RTD at the bottom because it was the very end of the signing, but he drew this Dalek for me. And it was for the Now I Am 600 signing.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And then I have some more Scott Gray. So we've got the 8th Doctor by Scott Gray.
Stunning.
And we've got Jodie by Scott Gray. So before I owned the White Dragon page, this was the only piece of Jodie artwork I had. And then we've got Ncuti Gatwa.
That's amazing.
15th Doctor by Scott Gray. And then there's one last little bit of comic book goodness to show you. So this is genuinely rare. Here are some original Doctor Who magazine comic strip scripts. So this is the complete script for Be Forgot. And here is the original pencils by David Roach for the entire strip.
Oh my goodness.
So you can see the entire book.
Wow.
So that's quite modern, but I also have Oblivion, the 8th Doctor. So these are the genuine scripts. So you can see on here, Scott Gray has written a note. David, here's the script for your ref, Scott. So this would have been sent to David Roach to ink. So you can see there, Oblivion Part 5. Dear David, here's the script for Part 5. Martin should have sent you pages 3 and 4 by now. Best, Scott.
Wow.
I don't have Part 6 and I don't have Part 4, but I do have 1, 2, 3 and 5. So there we are. So original strips from a landmark Doctor Who. Here we are.
Oh, wow.
So you can see this is some Stas Johnson artwork. These aren't original, these are photocopies.
Ink tester.
Yeah.
Oh wow. So this is the 4th Doctor.
4th Doctor, and this is by the artist Charlie Adlard, who went on to draw the majority of The Walking Dead. So he wasn't the co-creator, but he was the artist who drew 180 odd issues. And if you look at the faces, if you have read The Walking Dead, this face in particular, you'll definitely recognize it's Charlie Adlard. Also, what's interesting about this one is when the book was reprinted, if anyone's got the graphic novel, I think it's Land of the Blind, you'll see in the strip the wings of the Zarbi have been cut off, whereas here you can see the edges.
That's incredible.
So that one's by Charlie Adlard, who I think signed it at the bottom as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I didn't buy it direct from him. So we've got that piece. Then we've got a 10th Doctor and the Brigadier page. These used to hang on our walls, but we had a flood, and so the backing paper was damaged, hence why there's no backing paper at the moment. And we had to take them down for summer because the sun was shining through and it was beginning to hit the pages, and it would have started to distort the blacks.
Right.
Because it breaks the blacks down. And then you might recognize this page.
Oh my gosh.
Apologies, it's crooked.
Sonic.
His Sonic is destroyed in Doctor Who Magazine terms for the last time as the 8th Doctor. And this one's really cool. It's by an artist called Anthony Williams. And you can see it's got Susan, first and foremost, the 8th Doctor, but also the Time Lords and Gallifrey. Yeah. Very reminiscent of the shot from the shot you saw in the Sound of Drums, or I think it's the Sound of Drums. But yeah, this is the Curious Tale of Spring-Heeled Jack.
That's incredible.
So quite a variety of different artists that we have.
Yeah, what an amazing collection. A variety of doctors, a variety of artists.
What's unusual as well about the ones that we have are the fact that the first, second Doctor artwork is still Doctor Who Magazine artwork. We don't own anything from TV Action or Countdown, etc., which makes finding third Doctor artwork trickier. Because at this point,
where do you get it?
We probably could find artwork from Countdown. But now to complete the set, you kind of want Doctor Who Magazine third Doctor artwork. And it's not all that many strips that he's been in. But yeah, there we go. So,
wow.
So never published in Doctor Who Magazine, but they are by the long-term editor of the comic strip. And if you include these two, again, not from the magazine, but if we include them, the only one I'm now missing is John Hurt.
Wow. This is very, very special.
It's both happy and sad to look at these because these are the stories that I wrote when I was very young. So great. However, if you look, the flood hit my stories. So these were genuinely, as you can imagine, the only copies of these that ever existed. The flood has damaged. Yeah, so these are the stories I used to write when I was very young. This is the 7th Doctor and Ace. I wrote 7th Doctor and 8th stories, and then I also wrote some featuring the 8th Doctor and his companion from the BBC books. Yeah. But I kind of mixed up the continuity, the Doctor, Sam and Croton. So I mixed those continuities up, and then I made my own companion. I made my own monsters. So this is a cyborg. And what was great about this was I did a comic in one of the annuals, and I was able to adapt that specific story. So that featured a villain called the Surpluses. So this specific story I adapted into an annual story 25 years later. And the reason being that specific annual dictated, it was a William Hartnell annual in the vein of what would have been put out in the 60s. And they were very, very much more child-focused, simplistic stories. And I thought it was interesting to go back to a story I wrote when I was young, because they were much more simplistic stories than what I would probably write now. So I went back in and we directly used the surpluses. Surpluses. 25 years later, my
from script to screen.
Yeah. So that was fun. And also, this has a direct bearing on you because these are the stories I wrote in the early 2000s that continued the Radio Times Doctor Who stories. So you can see Dave and Stacey. Dave was Stacey's boyfriend in the first story. By this point, 5 years or so had gone by since those stories were published, and I didn't have that reprint. I was 13, 14 years old when I did this. I wasn't able to find them on the internet, so I was remembering. So the first few are remakes of what I could remember. Then I did start to create my own new stories featuring those characters. So this is an interesting one. So this was from 2002. As you can see, it's called The Extra Doctor, and it's a crossover between the 8th Doctor and then unknown 10th Doctor.
Wow, because this would have been 2002.
2002, so there we are.
Wow.
I would say I was the first person to the 10th Doctor, but that would have been The Curse of Fatal Death. So I wasn't the first. The Death of Peladon.
Wow. Look at all of this.
There we are. I wish my handwriting was still this neat. Years after these were finished, so I finished writing these in 2004. Years later, I then got to revisit the same characters in the Doctor Who 1997 annual. This is the original version. You can see where I proofread it. We changed bits of the dialogue to make it flow a little bit better. Some Dalek stories. This is what I do. So when I write them out, I plot them on a piece of paper. I cannot draw, as is evidence from this, but this allows me to work out the space on the page, because if I can't fit it on a page, the artist can't. Then I'll type this up to an actual script, and then that goes to the artist. And the artist often doesn't see this. Sometimes they do ask me, can I see it? But most of the time they will turn around and they're either not aware this exists, or I'll tell them it exists and they don't want to see it.
So incredible.
So think about how many words. These are some Dalek stories. Very small handwriting. They're quite fun to look back on. I don't often. And you can see the water damage again, unfortunately. This was probably the most creative that I was in Doctor Who until I worked for Forbidden Planet and Titan. At the same time I was doing doing these comics with the Terracorus, I was working at Forbidden Planet. So again, this was from a book signing. So I ran this book signing with George.
Oh, lovely.
I don't often go. The only time I think that I've ever really gone to a book signing specifically that I didn't run was.
Oh, wow.
So Colin has seen this. I was very impressed. Well, you know what these books are.
The Terracorus annuals.
And here's my first. So this was the first Terracorus annual that I worked on. This is my first Doctor Who comic. So this was drawn by one of my friends, Tiziana. So Italian artist. Wow. What's funny, I don't think I've had a Doctor Who strip drawn by an English artist. So Italian. Nessie's American. Annual 1989. There's an Estonian artist who drew that one. I don't have any in 88, but lots of my friends contributed. Missed out on the Master, and I missed out on 1972. I came late to the game. Really rare. I don't think many people own this, but the reason why I own all of these. This one is my strip.
Wow, look at that.
I think we should probably tell people I didn't actually draw these. I wrote the scripts.
Right. That's so cool.
This is by Ness Head, very talented artist.
Yes, yeah. Really a treasure trove of graphic novels and comics here. Obviously, everybody will know of the Doctor Who and the Daleks by Robert Hack. I wanted to get this book for years. I've known about it. And it's 8 years of bizarre cartoons from the pages of Doctor Who magazine by Jamie Lenman. And also Vorp here. Very cool to see that in there. I did own the original volume 1 and 2, but I had a flood. Unfortunately, I had a flood. And my 1 and 2 got damaged, so I had to replace it. You'll see every so often there's something here that's warped. That was, if you pardon the pun with warp, that was one of the ones I had to throw away. They didn't have mode; it was just you couldn't read them anymore. I think you opened this one, but there we are. Those are very hard to track down in the UK. In the US, not so hard. But
Not the hardback. I would have liked the hardback. I would encourage any fan who is a comic book reader as well to pick out every single one of their
this is cutaway comics.
So what they do is they work with the original writers of various serials. So Eric Saywood here, and they create original stories based on specific characters unique to that story that writer owns the copyright for. So Eric Saywood owns the rights to Lytton. So they've worked with him to create a kind of espionage type police procedural, down and dirty, because it's based in Soho, and
they'll do Kickstarters for each of them. And
so Lytton was for, and the great thing about these as well is most people who follow comics will know that you generally what happens is you have a comic and then a graphic novel, but these haven't been released as a graphic novel, so you can only buy them in comic book form.
So you read them issue by issue. And
so 4 issues of Lytton. Then there was a single issue of Omega. They all have variant covers as well. So I just picked the cover I like the most, but I know some fans do do you buy all of the covers?
Yeah. I don't know any fans like that.
Omega. This one also was released in a unplugged black and white version. So these are all in colour.
Wow.
This version was released in black and white. Very reminiscent of John Ridgway's Sixth Doctor, Seventh Doctor comics.
Yeah, definitely. Wow.
Doing amazing work. And also, it should be said that, they're still being produced now. Well, Eldrad Must Live, or Chini, the assassins from Revelation of the Daleks. And then I back the Kickstarter for Paradise Towers. Yeah. And I've backed the Kickstarter for the others, and I would encourage everybody who subscribes to you to find them. You get bonus things like signatures and
that's so cool. Yeah, really, if you can afford it, it's very worthwhile.
Yeah. And then just a couple of Doctor Who comic oddities. You can see in this one sadly is warped from the water damage I was telling you about. 2 issues of Faction Paradox comic. There was only 2 issues. Actually, it has some really nice artwork. Recently, this was printed via Amazon Print on Demand. There's the
wow, look at that. Fans of the Demons. Well,
Tarakarus. He's a writer for Tarakarus that you'll know.
Yeah.
Here we are. So this was in black and white. This is, be careful if anyone just finds this on eBay. It doesn't say it's in black and white, but the comic does come in black and white. So this is a sequel to The Daemons, but also the short film series, The White Witch, here. Because this is Amazon Print on Demand, I'd imagine you can buy it in the US.
Oh, that's cool. And you've got the latest Daleks and Cybermen releases. Those are beautiful. This is awesome right here.
So this is signed by Lee Sullivan, who was the artist of these stories. And he says, looking forward to seeing your version. When I met Lee at a convention, I think this is from 2016, 2017, I explained to Lee that I used to pick these up when I was a child, and I went away and I started to write my own versions. Once these Radio Times comic strips had ceased in the magazine, I went away and started to write my own because I missed it. I missed having them every week. So I wrote my own continuations. I explained to him that I'd done this from the early 2000s up to not long before Russell brought the show back. So he joked to say, looking forward to seeing your version. Little did he know, just a few years later, that we would be making annual 1997. And I did actually write the comic strip in that story. So he did actually get to see my version of his characters from this run. This one is a bit naughty. So a few years ago, somebody had put on Lulu. There was a fan who'd scanned in all of the original first, second, third Doctor comic strips
from like TV comic
exactly Countdown, TV Action, etc.
These were never, professionally released.
No, they've never been. Partly because you'd have to print them in an odd way, because if I just get this out, this is a reprint that came in Doctor Who magazine. If you can see here, this works because it's stapled, but you can't have bleed.
Yeah.
Normally, when you print a book, you expect that the curvature means that you lose some in the gutter. So here you don't, because it's stapled, so it's fine. Whereas if you were to put it in a book, if you look here, you can see you lose, this is called the gutter, and you lose some of the image. And if you did this on some of these older stories, you'd actually lose part of the dialogue.
Yeah.
So the solution is that you either move the dialogue, but if you don't have the original artwork you saw before, you can, with the acetate, you can't move it because you can't really Photoshop what you can't see. Or you could do, but it would take a long time to do that. So that we're in a funny situation where these strips are very difficult to reproduce. So I don't think Panini have the answer as to what they do. So this fan, I think this fan, bored of waiting for them to be officially released, he did this naughty unofficial version that was not on sale for very long, and I managed to snag, so you can see it's in colour, and you can see where he's joined up that section. And so this goes from the first Doctor, carries through to the second Doctor, picks up with the third Doctor, a very terrifying third Doctor.
I mean, these are such wacky and wild and creative comics that, there's so many here that it's a treasure trove waiting to be discovered. Kind of, and I think we saw with the Dalek Chronicles release.
Yeah, which is there as well.
I never thought we'd get. I wanted that,
There we are.
for years before it came out.
Yeah. And
Isn't there an older version of this? That's very...
there is an older version.
Very expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, they came out, I think, as part of Classic Comics. That was before my time. But just to explain...
Yeah.
So these are old issues that Doctor Who magazine, the team behind Doctor Who magazine in the 90s put out this run called Classic Comics, which did what it said on the tin. It re-released Classic Doctor Who comics. This one's unusual because this is actually the original Peter Cushing comic.
Right.
So this has never been reprinted after this. This is the only...
And the cover art, we saw the original at the...
Western Museum.
Yeah.
Should have took it with me. I should have held it next to me. What's interesting about this as well is I found out recently that there is a Spanish adaptation of the Dalek Invasion of Earth.
Oh.
So I'm actually working to translate it and potentially... I'll make my own version. I won't put it for sale, but I'll make my own version of that one. That one's a bit shorter than this one, but you can see.
Very cool. Oh, that artwork is
what's interesting about this one is they do make a note on it about the copyright. Let me try and find the notice. It's very amusing to say that they've tried to track down the copyright owners. All attempts have been made to trace the copyright owners of Dell Comics, Doctor Who, and the Daleks adaptation. Any copyright holders should make Marvel Comics, as used to be the publishers of Doctor Magazine, aware and will be paid at our usual rates. So what's unusual about this specific strip? I think this might be unique in the history of Doctor Who, potentially. They don't know who owns the copyright. And if you think how many bits of Doctor Who you can trace back and you can say this is owned by Panini, or this is owned by the BBC, or this is owned by...
Terry Nation.
Yeah, BBC Studios that was, BBC Worldwide that was, BBC Enterprises, or Terry Nation, Eric Saywood, etc. It's really unusual to find a piece of Doctor Who that actually the companies have gone bankrupt. Now, the way that contracts work, if you were to release Titan Comics, let's say Titan Comics either relinquish their rights or Titan Comics goes bankrupt. It's now in their contracts that the rights revert back to at the end of the contract. For whatever reason the contract ends, the rights for those comics revert back to the BBC. The BBC own those comics. Hence how IDW's comics can be reprinted by Titan because the rights are not held by IDW.
I see.
What happened with this is pre those being in the contract, pre those clauses being added to contracts. And so actually nobody owns, once Dell went bankrupt, not helped by the fact that it wasn't the BBC who made Doctor and the Daleks. It all gets confused because Dell doesn't exist anymore. And also the people who, the companies behind Doctor and the Daleks, the rights have shifted hands so many times. It's a confused mess now as to actually who owns the right. I'd imagine if we all live long enough, at some point, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years time, I'd imagine we could potentially be in a boat where we start to see some of Doctor Who fall out of copyright. In 2066, it's 70 years after Terry Nation died. So do all of the creations that he created, do they suddenly fall into the public domain, as is the copyright law? That's untested, and we're a long way away from that, because if you think the very earliest that could even be tested would be the 70th anniversary, assuming that somebody who made the first season died that year. We know that didn't happen, but let's say for argument's sake somebody died very soon after production on the first season, one of the writers. It would be 70 years before that starts to come up. So at some point I would be curious to see if these monsters do start to fall in the public domain. So you could potentially be in a position where the Daleks could actually one day be public domain. As you can see, I have lots and lots of different books, so I have a big reading pile to get through. I kind of like to juggle. I don't sit and read all of one thing. Say for example the Eighth Doctor books, I'll juggle. I'll read the Eighth Doctor, then read a Target, and then read an old Target. A couple of things to note. So you can probably see I really like to read autobiographies of lots of the Doctor Who cast. Interestingly, this one is signed by Michael Troughton. quite a lot of non-fiction. I really like reading Doctor Who. That's short stories, but I really like to read Doctor Who non-fiction.
I've never seen this Justice Sir.
This is about the Doctor Who audios that Nick Briggs produced before he founded Big Finish. I have quite a few bits that have been signed from various book signings that I used to run at Forbidden Planet. So this one is from Sophie Aldred to Anthony. It says, "With love, thanks for trusting Ace." The reason why she wrote that is we'd done the Ace badge and the hoodie. And she really loved the fact that, this was pre-Power of the Doctor. She really loved the fact that we were merchandising Ace and we were keeping her popular with the fans, even when she wasn't on television. You'll see I have a collection of TARDIS dotted around the house. I used to have a few more. The one that's always eluded me is the 7th Doctor character option TARDIS. I've never tracked that one down. But a certain Russell T Davies from one of the many book signings I did with Andrew. So they weren't signatures from me going to a signing. I don't often go to signings. But they were from when I used to run those signings in Forbidden Planet. One of the perks of the job.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Doctor Who Guide YouTube channel. Now,
don't forget to subscribe to the Doctor Who Guide YouTube channel. You know it makes sense.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Doctor Who Guide YouTube channel.
Hello. Don't forget to subscribe to the Doctor Who YouTube channel guide.